Welcome back to the Michael Lofton Show on a Thursday here on Reason and Theology. I want to go over a survey that was conducted by the Orthodox Church in America on Orthodox converts, which I found to be fascinating. There's all kinds of insights in it. But this is a 2023 survey. In fact, the title of it is 2023 Orthodox Convert Survey Summary Presentation. So there's a PowerPoint. I'm not going to go through every slide. I am going to be a little selective in which slides we're going to go through. I'll put a link to it in the show notes if you want to go and watch, or go and check out the rest of the PowerPoint. But I'm going to focus on some key slides that will tell us a little bit about the survey, who the people are, what they value, but also what their concerns are. Some of the turnoffs that they've experienced in Eastern Orthodoxy. And I cover this because there, is a large group of people who are currently online, especially Eastern Orthodox, many of them apologists. And they present the situation such that Catholicism is just in chaos. So come home to Eastern Orthodoxy where everything is just fine and dandy. And I've often pointed out that, a lot of the struggles that the Catholic Church is experiencing, other communions are also experiencing, including Eastern Orthodox. They're not exempt. So the grass isn't really greener. And I think this survey bears that out. Though not exhaustively, much more can be said beyond what is going to be demonstrated in the survey. But it is something important to go over because this is coming from the Orthodox themselves. This is their source. This is a survey that they put on the Orthodox Church in America. So I'm going to share my screen and I want to go over this. And I'm doing this especially for Catholics who are thinking about leaving for Eastern Orthodoxy, kind of under this gullible impression that things are just way better in Orthodoxy, or for Orthodox who are looking into Catholicism, but they don't really know what's going on in Catholicism. I can certainly say a lot of the struggles and a lot of the concerns that people are experiencing here in Orthodoxy is also applicable to things that one will experience in Catholicism. So ultimately, you have to make a decision not based on, well, what are the controversies? What are the negatives? Rather, you have to make a decision ultimately based on, well, what is the truth? What church did Christ establish? Did he give us the papacy? Those are the kind of questions that we have to look into. And I have an entire playlist dedicated to this. So if you're an Orthodox looking into Catholicism, it's called Engaging Eastern Orthodoxy here on the channel, an entire playlist dedicated to exploring those questions from a perspective of, is the Catholic perspective true or is Eastern Orthodoxy true, based on the historical, biblical, and theological claims. Okay, so let's go ahead and go over the survey here. I'm pulling it up on my screen so you can see it. You should be able to see it now. So again, 2023 Orthodox Convert Survey Summary. Again, from the Orthodox Church in America. So it gives us some relevant background info on recent Orthodox Christian converts based on 2023 Orthodox Convert Survey. It's to prepare you for portions of the Forum Project 2030 discussion on attracting and integrating converts. It does note that the presentation cannot possibly cover all of the insights from the survey, but it's going to give you just kind of a, an overall summary. So let's go over to slide 14 and look at this one here. It goes over the converts in relation to COVID in the pandemic. What's interesting, this slide is called Almost Half Converted Since the Pandemic Began. In fact, prior to COVID, the Orthodox Church in America was really struggling, according to this survey. But after the pandemic, they started to get a lot of converts. So conversion date for the people surveyed, 29% before 2010, 21% from 2010 to 2019, 49% of the people they surveyed was after January 21 of 2019 that they converted. So in other words, these are post COVID conversions by and large. So they're experiencing an increase after COVID. Here it kind of gives you a gender versus conversion period. It seems that there's a lot of males between ages 21 to 30, and then also 31 to 40. Let's go here to slide 19. This is going to go over a number of previous religion switches before becoming Orthodox. Now, I found this one phrased in a odd way because switching religions is not the same as switching between denominations. So that, I think, is phrased poorly. When you ask a person, how many religions have you switched? Well, they may have switched 12 times within Christianity, but never, switched outside of Christianity. So they would say none. I've had no religion switches. Whereas some could interpret religion switches to mean changing your denomination, like from Catholic to Orthodox or something like that. So I kind of feel that's ambiguously phrased here. But be that as it may, it says number of previous religion switches before becoming Orthodox. 9.9% said more than once. And then once for 15.7%. So that's a quarter of people combined. And then 75% roughly said that they've had none. But again, I think we kind of have a difficulty in what is meant by religion here. Okay. Let's also go to, slide 20 here. So respondents' previous religious affiliation. So it notes 20% used to be Roman Catholic. 20%. Now, that's a pretty large number. And this is actually something that I've been sounding the alarm on for quite a long time. Us Catholics are causing this in many ways. Some of it is by bad liturgies, a lack of church discipline on part of the clergy, poor decisions on part of the clergy, scandals by clergy and laity, all of that. But a lot of it is also because we are constantly shooting ourselves in the foot by criticizing our own and criticizing the Catholic Church and the Pope in ways that is not helpful and, frankly, not even truthful, not even accurate. So we end up scandalizing a lot of people unnecessarily. And so they go and they look for something else. Well, 20% used to be Roman Catholics. That is sad. 35% mainline Protestants, and then 29% evangelical or other Protestants. So that's about 65% of their converts are coming from Protestantism. 65%. And you'll see why. You'll see what attracted them to Orthodoxy. But then you also have about a total of 20% with other groups like Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, Seventh-day Adventists, and non-Christians, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhists, and other religions and stuff like that. You'll note the vast majority, however, of their converts are from other Christians, from other Christian denominations. They're not getting a lot of converts from non-Christians. They're mostly getting converts from other Christian denominations and bodies. Let's see. Let's go to slide 26. What attracted you? One person says, Orthodoxy focused on resurrection and forgiveness, not just sin. I kind of feel like that's a straw man. Because I think that you find that outside of Orthodoxy as well. Another person says, I was missing a sense of the sacred. Well, you can certainly find a sense of the sacred among the Orthodox, but I think you could also find that among others as well. Other faiths felt shallow and malnourished. Well, I think that also applies in some instances to Eastern Orthodox. There's some good parishes and there's some bad parishes. Likewise elsewhere. By the way, I don't find any of these really legitimate reasons to convert. What I noticed in the survey, I didn't see one person who said, I converted to Orthodoxy because I believe this is the church that Christ established. And here's why. You don't see that. You see them reacting to something else. They're fleeing something else. My church didn't have a sense of the sacred. My church was, malnourished and shallow. My church just focused on sin. They're not converting to Orthodoxy ultimately because they've really discovered the truth. They're more getting away from something, and then they believe they find the solution in Orthodoxy, where in reality, they're going to find some of the same problems that made them leave wherever they were and join Orthodoxy. They're going to end up finding it in Orthodoxy. So these aren't very good reasons to convert. Another person says, my Protestant faith felt like dipping my finger in a lukewarm bowl of hot water. Orthodoxy felt like reaching my arm into a pool to find out how deep it goes and finding myself falling headfirst into unknown infinite depths. Well, I think there's some truth to that. In Protestantism, it is kind of like a bowl of water. And I would say Orthodoxy is like a pool. But I would say Catholicism is like the ocean. I think there's a whole lot more to discover in Catholicism because it's much larger tradition. Okay. Now, let's go to slide 28. Elements of the orthodoxy that I guess that meant elements of orthodoxy or elements of the Orthodox that were most difficult for you. The largest thing here, that looks like 65% said family issues and relationships was the most difficult thing for them in converting to Orthodoxy. Family issues and relationships. Then after that, you have the Theotokos. So the Virgin Mary, she's like the number one doctrinal problem that people have with Orthodoxy in converting is the Virgin Mary. And then after that, icons. And then after that, saints. After that, unlearning previous traditions. After that, Eucharist. After that, fasting. And it goes smaller and smaller and smaller. But I thought that was funny. Let's go to slide 29. Let's see here. Did the pandemic influence your decision to explore the Orthodox faith? Almost 50% were yes or maybe here, when you combine them. 83, which looks to me like a fourth, said yes, definitely. Another fourth said possibly. So basically half. COVID was a big issue for them, either definitely or possibly. 54% said no. The pandemic did not influence their decision. Okay. Now, what you'll notice here is, again, the driving force is pandemic, a lack of the sacred and where they are, dissatisfaction where they are. What's missing, though? Well, I really have been convinced that Orthodoxy is where the truth is. Now, I imagine a lot of these people will say, well, yeah, I am convinced. Sure. But why are you convinced of that? Because you were moving away from something else and you're looking for something. You're more moving away than you were, oh, I found and discovered the truth and now I must leave. It's a reaction against something from a lot of this. Let's go to slide number 31. First encounters with Orthodoxy. Bishop Ware, who I've interviewed on this show, Father Schmemann, Meyendorf, Thomas Hopko, and others. So their work, right? Those are many standard sources. And That's to be expected. They're generally the most popular when it comes to Orthodox literature. Others said friends invited me. They walked into church one day. They were looking for another topic, newspaper ad for the Orthodox Church, Orthodox hymns online, a Google search of church fathers, the Becoming Truly Human film. They saw a priest performing a panakida in one instance with a family at a cemetery. Um, and then they also list some unusual sources. But those were kind of the more standard ones at first. Now, what motivated you to become acquainted with the Orthodox faith? How did you become acquainted? Now, look at this. 66%, they are dissatisfied with the previous religion that they were in. Now, notice they're kind of using religion here to refer to denomination. Because we'll note most of the people that converted were from just another denomination, not another religion. So they're kind of using the term religion falsely here. But they were dissatisfied with the communion that they were in. 66%. 66%. In other words, if things were going better in Catholicism or even Protestantism, the majority of converts to Orthodoxy would not be converting. The reason why is because there's problems elsewhere. Now, here's the double-edged sword. A lot of those same problems that they're fleeing exist in Orthodoxy. So if you left for this reason, well, how long are you going to really stay in Orthodoxy? This isn't a good reason to become Orthodox. If you're fleeing from something, you find out the grass isn't really greener. Well, how long are you really going to be sticking around? Okay, so 67% also answered they were seeking deeper spiritual life. Well, that's a good thing, right? That's not necessarily reactionary, although it could be. It could be that they feel like, okay, I'm not really getting that where I'm at, so I'm going to react against that and go and look for something else. And that's not entirely bad, right? I mean, because you do want to have a deeper spiritual life. But you can certainly find that in places outside of Orthodoxy. And you can also find a lot of places in Orthodoxy where it's pretty shallow in spiritual life. So I don't know if that's really the best reason. Another person says, or another group, 35%, they were encouraged by a friend, family member, or acquaintance. That's what motivated them. About 49%, they said they read something about Orthodoxy. Now look at this one. 50% said what motivated them to become Orthodox? They encountered a podcast or YouTube channel. There's going to be more about this here in the next slide. A podcast or YouTube channel. This actually comes back to bite the Orthodox Church in America, as we'll see here in a moment. But I do want to make note of that. And then 20% said a web search. Okay. Now look at this. The next slide, 33. Pay attention to this. Look, online influencers, most mentions. So who are the people online who are most influencing you to become Orthodox? If you were influenced by an online source, tell us which one. Number 1, Jay Dyer. Oh boy. Jay Dyer. Well, no surprise, right? But Jay Dyer, as I've demonstrated many times on this channel, is one of the most toxic people out there. Engages in some of the most unchristian behavior and certainly does not represent Orthodoxy very well. But he does have a large cult following. And that does explain a lot of this online influence. And the number one influencer for them is Jay Dyer. Now, pay attention to this. What's interesting here is the number one influencer that led these converts to the Orthodox Church in America is the same influencer who condemns the Orthodox Church in America and is telling people to leave the Orthodox Church in America because he has a beef with the Orthodox Church in America with some bishops and priests. So this isn't going to work well for the Orthodox Church in America because a large amount of their converts that are coming in from guys like Jay Dyer. And then Jay Dyer says, don't go to the OCA. They're incredibly liberal. They have gay parishes. They have abandoned the faith. Don't go there. And then they start smearing the clergy in the OCA, bishops and priests. I've done videos demonstrating this before. It's no secret, though. This is going to be an issue for the OCA. Because a lot of those people who are coming to the OCA are not going to be there long. Because they're going to continue to listen to the guy who led them to Orthodoxy. And they're going to say, well, this guy that I'm listening to is telling me to flee the OCA. Because they're having gay parishes and gay this and gay that. And I mean, Jay Dyer talks about that pretty often. He calls it Skittles stuff. And so they're going to connect the dots and they're going to say, I'm in the wrong jurisdiction, and they're going to leave. So this is going to be a big issue for the OCA. And if the Orthodox Church in America, if the bishops there do not step up and do something about it, they're going to start bleeding numbers. Well, number 2, Father Josiah Trenum, who I refuted just earlier today in a video, one among several videos. Ancient Faith Radio, who I've also addressed. Jonathan Pajot, I've had him on the channel before. Bailey Spiridon. Lord of the Spirits show with Father Andrew Domick and Stephen DeYoung. Father Peter Ayers also refuted him very often. Abbot Trifon also have response videos to his material. Jordan Peterson, which is weird because Jordan Peterson is not Eastern Orthodox. And David Aaron, another Jay Dyer cult follower. There's a quote that says, unfortunately, I was influenced by blank, whose videos on Roman Catholic innovations over the last 1,000 years got me reading the early church fathers and the Orthodox positions on theology and ecclesiology. This sounds a whole lot like they're referring to Jay Dyer. I do not follow him anymore. And honestly hope that the clergy clamp down on online apologists. So this person who converted, most likely they're referring to either Peter Ayers or Jay Dyer, one of those two. He's saying, though I converted from them, I don't follow them anymore. I see a whole lot of problems with them, and I hope the clergy does something about them. Well, the clergy aren't really doing a whole lot about them right now. But this is going to be a big issue for them. Because a lot of those online influencers are not on the side of the OCA. I'll tell you that. Okay, so more influencer comments, pros and cons. So it has a little bit more. Here's a quote from a person. Speaking about Christ with my friend, and he asked me if I knew about Orthodoxy. When I said that I didn't, he linked me with Dyer's channel, Jay Dyer. After I watched his video refuting Protestantism, decided to check out my nearest Orthodox church. And that led me on the path to my conversion. Before that, I had never entertained a single thought of converting from Baptist Christianity. So this person is already being set up for failure because one of the reasons why he converted is from the material of Jay Dyer. Well, what happens when he starts to find out a lot of the problems with Jay Dyer? I'm not just talking about personal problems, but with his content. And how it's not reflective of Eastern Orthodoxy in some cases. Well, where's that going to leave him? Maybe he'll be like the other guy who says, well, I know he's wrong, but, I guess God writes with, straight lines with crooked sticks or whatever. This other person says, quote, Dyer introduced me to Orthodoxy. Saw an interview on my YouTube channel on technocracy. 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 I thought he was handsome and very intelligent, end quote. Okay. So another person who's converted from Dyer. This isn't good for the OCA because Dyer is the very one railing against the Orthodox Church in America. Railing against their bishops, railing against their priests, telling people, don't go to the OCA, leave the OCA. This is not a good look for them. Another person says, came across Jay Dyer in his debate against Muslim scholars. That helped me a lot. The respondent was formerly a Muslim. Another person says, YouTube personalities caused rigorous trends, made me hesitate in converting. So he's probably talking about Jay Dyer and others like that, where you find rigorous trends among him, Peter Ayers, Deacon Ananias Sorum, and among others. rigorous trends, and this made that person hesitate in converting. So it was actually a turnoff for them. Another person said, I started with Jordan Peterson, again, who's not Orthodox, then Jonathan Pajot, then to ancient faith podcasts like the Lord of Spirits. Now, keep in mind, a lot of these online influencers that I just mentioned rail against ancient faith radio. So there's serious internal conflict here. Another person said, I find a lot of AFR, that's ancient faith radio, programming off-putting. I'll say. I remember the hit piece they did on me that was absolutely atrocious. I remember Ancient Faith Radio quoted another guy and presented it as me, and then proceeded to refute that quote as if it was me, and then laughed about how absurd it was. And yet I wasn't even the one who said it. Pretty terrible stuff. It feels like Protestant megachurch cult of personality programming, one person says. Another person says they watched a video to get talking points for the side of Protestantism against Orthodox-leaning friends. They came away realizing I was the wrong one. Another person says, I grew up in many places of the world and always seemed to encounter at least one Orthodox Christian wherever I went. They had always been reference points for me that I looked back on. Let's go to the next slide here, 35. This one says, how many Orthodox parishes did you attend first before deciding to embrace Orthodoxy? 50% said 1. 24% said 2. 13% said 3. And 13% said more than 3. Now let's go to slide 38. They have some interesting parish selection quotes here. I don't know how they selected them, how they determined it, but they're pretty interesting. Number one person said, women dress modestly and a majority wear head coverings. Well, maybe in some OCA parishes. In a lot of OCA parishes, you don't have that. Women dress modestly and the majority wear head coverings. I feel that I attend a parish where people take their faith seriously. And this is a female. Sounds like a good parish in that area. Not all Orthodox parishes are like that, though. Even OCA, like I said. In fact, I've seen videos kind of making fun of the OCA for not wearing, and this is by Orthodox, by the way, making fun of the OCA for not wearing head coverings and stuff like that. Okay, another person said, good priest who's not an ecumenist or modernist. Oh, boy. Here we go. Can you guess he's probably a former Rat Trad Catholic, right? Equating ecumenism with modernism, of course, obviously not the same thing. Ecumenism, at least from the Catholic perspective, is helping people with their differences and working through those differences so that they can return to the Catholic Church. That's ecumenism. That's certainly not modernism. But you can kind of see that negative, reactionary / ignorant approach coming out in this commenter. Another person says priest who doesn't believe in ecumenism or anything woke. So they're equating ecumenism with being woke. Now, here's why this is a problem for Orthodoxy. Well, many in the OCA and many Orthodox in the United States are going to be in favor of ecumenical relations with the Catholic Church. This is, in fact, one of the reasons why Jay Dyer and others rail against the OCA. They say, oh, it's wrong because it's ecumenist. So this is an internal problem, an internal conflict in the OCA now. Because one of the guys that's leading people there is the same guy who's going to lead them outside of OCA. And I should say more than just one guy. It's a group of people. A priest who doesn't believe in ecumenism or anything woke. Sounds like, again, he's fleeing away from something. Now, what's curious is we're going to see some of the complaints later on about the OCA, and that is they're experiencing some of these things there. So here's the funny thing, and this is what I've been warning people about. You run to the Orthodox because you think the grass is greener. You run to the Orthodox because you're fleeing away from a problem, ecumenism or woke, but then you get to Orthodoxy and you find they have the same problem. ecumenism, and woke. Or at least that's how they're going to perceive it. Another person said old calendar, single spoon, no masks. Can't really say this person has their priorities straight here. Sounds pretty absurd that's what's on their mind. Not that Orthodoxy is the church established by Christ. I go to receive Jesus in the Eucharist. No, I want to use the Julian calendar. And don't give me multiple spoons, right? Don't use the communion for multiple spoons. I want to use it from the same spoon as the next guy. And I don't want to wear my masks. Okay. Can you guess whether or not this person converted after and due to COVID? All right. So another says, has many converts like me, their parish, who left some of the same mega churches I'd attended. Sounds like a Protestant. Another person says, I came for theological and philosophical reasons. I've fallen in love with the people. Not a terrible reason. I can respect that a whole lot more than the old calendar guy. This next person says, being around cradles is helpful for my spiritual growth. Okay. This person says, of an ethnic parish, it's not my culture. I don't know the dances or the food. Okay. All right. Well, actually, one of the problems that you're going to see from a lot of the people, a lot of the complaints that they have is ethnic issues. We'll see that here in a moment. And then from a chosen parish, I don't know what they mean by that. The person says they felt uniquely American, or it felt uniquely American. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's go to maybe slide number 40 here. Let's get into some of the turnoffs. This is kind of the turnoff section. Slides 41 through 49. So this is kind of the bulk, or the highlight, or the most important part of the presentation, in my opinion. What are some of the things that are turning them off from the Orthodox Church in America? Number one reason, ethnic issues. Ethnic, insular elements of parishes. The parishes are too focused on ethnicity. And they're insular. Yikes. Now, we know this has been a problem with Orthodoxy for a long time. And in fact, it's been condemned by Constantinople. And yet it's still a very, very massive problem in Orthodoxy. As we're going to see from select quotes, well, I didn't belong to this particular ethnicity, so when I walked in the door, they asked me, what are you doing here? Yikes. It's a real problem. This will certainly make you think twice about converting. Number two, parish size. Parish and parishioner qualities. That's a huge turnoff. Well, frankly, I would say that's shallow on part of these people who answered that. That's very shallow. Incredibly shallow. It doesn't matter what the parish size is or the quality. The question is this the church Christ established? If the answer is yes, then I don't care if it's 3 people. It doesn't matter what the size is. That's shallow. Well, number 3, COVID issues and reactions against COVID. COVID issues and reactions against COVID. Well, that's because in Orthodoxy, there are COVID issues and reactions to COVID. There were a lot of Orthodox churches that also closed. There are a lot of Orthodox churches who went from multiple communion spoons, from 1 to multiple, and that was a huge issue for some people. One of the things that Jay Dyer rails against with the Orthodox Church in America is he says they were forbidding people from kissing the icons. And he just went off on that. But that, of course, was due to COVID. Another huge turnoff was toxic Orthodox social media environment. Overly zealous online Orthodox. Now, who is that referring to? Obviously, is Jay Dyer. Peter Ayers, Deacon Ananias Sorum, the usual suspects. That was a huge turnoff for some people. This is going to be a problem for the OCA. The OCA bishops are going to have to deal with many Orthodox apologists who are not really representing Orthodoxy very well, both in content and, more importantly, in their own behavior, in their own personal lives. They are not representing Christianity, let alone Orthodoxy. So another issue here is liberal ideas in the church, creeping secular liberalism. Now, isn't that funny? Because didn't we just see a whole bunch of converts were leaving their communion because of liberalism, modernism, woke? They were leaving those communions and coming to Orthodoxy to get away from it. And yet, one of their big turnoffs with Orthodoxy is encountering liberal ideas in Orthodoxy, creeping secular liberalism. This is why I say the grass isn't greener. You think you're dealing with that problem in your Catholic parish or your Protestant parish? Well, guess what? You'll deal with that in Orthodoxy too. Why? Because no communion is exempt from the problems in modernity. We all are facing the same problems. We all have to war against the same problems. Nobody is immune to it. The difference, however, with Catholicism is we actually have a magisterium that can straighten out controversies, whereas Protestants and Orthodox admittedly don't. So that's the fundamental, that's the deal breaker for me. The only place to be safe from the liberal ideas, you're going to have to take shelter in the magisterium. All right, so let's see what else here. Doctrinal confusion and guidance. Okay, so they're experiencing a lot of doctrinal confusion in Orthodoxy. Haven't I been saying that for a long time? What are you going to experience with Orthodoxy? A lot of doctrinal confusion, a lot of unanswered questions. Why? Because they don't have a magisterium. That should be pretty obvious why, right? When you don't have a magisterium, you're going to have doctrinal confusion. Now, we just saw a video earlier from Father Josiah Trenum. He tried to pull the wool over our eyes and say, oh, look, you guys in Catholicism, y'all have all these huge doctrinal problems, and we just have tiny doctrinal issues. Absurd nonsense. That's just not factually true. But then here, his very own, the Orthodox themselves are saying, one of the turnoffs I have is doctrinal confusion. It's a serious issue. Here's some quotes. Ethnic insularity quotes. Again, as part of the turnoff section, one person says, Orthodox people generally tend to be colder and more aloof than anything I've experienced as an evangelical. Another says, this particular ethnic group, women, making the comment that the converts are changing the culture of our church. That was a huge turnoff. So, in other words, this convert comes to Orthodoxy. They don't belong to this particular ethnic group. This ethnic person says, oh, these converts are changing our church and the culture of our church. They say that was a huge turnoff, and rightly so. Rightly so. In reference to an ethnic parish can be cold towards converts versus the warm Protestant environment I was used to. I still hear negative terms used of converts. This is true. This is very true. It's not every Orthodox parish. It is not. But it is a lot of them. Another person says, no one spoke to me. Priests seemed to be bothered that I wasn't part of this ethnic group. Yikes. People are valuing an ethnicity over the mission of the church, which is to save souls. This is a problem in Orthodoxy. Some are more concerned about preserving their culture and their local traditions over the Great Commission and saving souls. This is the sad reality. And there are Orthodox who speak against this. There are Orthodox who are opposed to this. But then there are plenty of Orthodox who are part of the problem. Another person said, I attended the local ethnic jurisdiction parish for more than a year. They didn't name, they redacted which jurisdiction. I attended the local ethnic jurisdiction parish for more than a year, but they decided they didn't want to baptize or chrismate anyone who wasn't marrying into this ethnic family, and suggested all of us non-ethnic people go back to our American churches. They were denying them the sacraments. That's not unique, by the way. There are a lot of horror stories about people being denied the sacraments because they don't belong to this particular ethnicity. And so when we speak of the Orthodox Church as one, well, I don't know. I think there's some challenges to that. Is it really one? Another person says they were welcomed with, why are you here? Are you part of this ethnic group? Is your husband, is he part of this ethnic group? That's how they were greeted. Why are you here? Are you, I don't know, Russian? Is your husband Russian? Are you Romanian? Is your husband Romanian? Why are you here? I actually like the way it's literally read here. Why you here? You ethnic group? You husband? He ethnic group? Okay. The next person says ethnic parishes such as Greek, Russian, etc. Seem to feel exclusive and focus on their ethnicity more than being a Christian. In some cases, that's true. Another person says sentiment was, I didn't need to be Orthodox because I was not part of this ethnic group and should go back to evangelical church after spending my money at their festivals. So this person spends money at their festivals and gets denied. He says, no, you cannot become Orthodox. They say, you can't become Orthodox. You have to go back to the Protestants. Yikes. Spectrum of atmospheres. Look at this picture. Holy Ascension Orthodox Church. Visitors always welcome. Okay, that's nice. That's friendly. I appreciate that. Then there's this one. Something in, I don't know, some Slavic language. And then it says, do not sit during services. Not very welcoming. Now, I'm all in favor of standing during the liturgical service. I mean, when we have it over here, the Divine Liturgy in the chapel over here, we stand for the entire thing. Well, I mean, during the sermon, we'll sit down. But aside from the homily, we stand for the entire liturgy. So I certainly appreciate standing during the liturgy, but I would never tell a person, oh, you have to stand and don't you dare sit down. Come on now. Not very welcoming. That's a failure. All right. So parish size and parishioner qualities, turnoffs. One person says, it wasn't easy for me to be somewhere that you're instantly noticed. Even so, though some parishioners greeted me, it was quite some time before I had the courage to start coming to coffee hour. Well, okay. I get that with the small parish. I get it. Sometimes you want to slip in, but come on. Another person said medium age in the parish is quite old. So it's not a lot of young people. Another person said parish communication not always up to date. Bible study canceled, no message, website info. I can attest to that. Yeah. Websites are rough there. Another person said Sunday school curriculum not well organized. All right. Another person said lack of evangelism. Well, I would imagine that if you have problems with, ethnocentrism and stuff like that, ethnophilitism. I would imagine there's not a whole lot of evangelism when you don't want this people outside of this ethnic group to be part of your church. Another says there are times I wish our parish was larger. Okay. More turnoffs. One person says, it's been an adjustment to not jump into ministries immediately upon joining the church. The non-denominational church really moves people into programs quickly. Doesn't take time to acclimate and discipline people. Another person said, male-only leadership and limits on what lay people could do in worship were hard since I was used to leading worship and preaching in my previous church. So this person has a difficulty with the male-only leadership and the fact that they're a woman and they can't really participate in the liturgy. Well, in fairness, some of the Orthodox churches now are having, women altar servers. Some have even adopted women deacons. And the Orthodox Church, the Greek Orthodox Church in America is now having discussions about women deaconesses. And so, anyways, another person says, cradles who didn't take their faith seriously disturbed me. So, cradle Orthodox who didn't take their faith seriously disturbed me. A lazy faith can be a turnoff for new people. Another person said, a lack of understanding and appreciation of their faith amongst many cradle Orthodox. Another person said, many people didn't know why they said or did what they did. They just did. So you can see a theme here. A lot of people don't know why they're Orthodox and don't know why they do what they do. Another person said, sometimes I felt talked down to by men in their 20s and 30s, roughly my age, especially men who are converts. Oh, here we go. Toxic Orthodox social media environment. Because I talk about this one a lot, so I read this one eagerly. This is one of the massive problems with Orthodoxy. Their online community is one of the worst. It is one of the most toxic. Now, I have seen some toxic stuff with Catholics, Protestants. I've seen it with Muslims, atheists. But boy, the Orthodox on social media, wow. Talk about toxic. Quote, based on online community, I thought all Orthodox were bloodthirsty people who only cared for debating. Gee, I wonder who gave them that impression. Jay Dyer? Yes. Another person said toxic legalistic culture, casual bigotry towards Jewish and LGBT individuals, and conspiracy theories. Sound familiar to you? Yep. You know who they're talking about. Another person says they felt like the Orthodox version of Lord of the Flies, a lot of unsupervised macho energy. Sounds about right. Another person says a cesspool of culture war sniping, racism, hatred betrays a completely blind adherence to the modern need of certainty. Had I approached Orthodoxy from another vantage point, they could have very well scared me off entirely. Another person says, oftentimes it feels as though people want more to defeat an enemy than to win a brother. Well said. They continue, this spirit is, I believe, keeping many Catholics and Protestants from seriously looking at Orthodoxy. Well, it's certainly a problem for them. Another person says, to me, much online discourse seems to be more informed by fundamental Protestantism than Orthodoxy. Nailed it. You'll note a lot of these online voices are more Protestant than they are Orthodox. They really haven't, a lot of them were converts from Protestantism, and they haven't really shed their Protestant skin. They're absolutely right. Spot on. Another person says people that, for whatever reason, view the church as a place where they're allowed to be hostile to LGBTQ people, left-wing people, or people outside a particular ethnic group. Thankfully, I've not experienced that from church members who stay through the process. Now, as far as surprises and disappointments, in reference to youth and children, one person says, disappointed by lack of youth services in the OCA. Need more support from OCA for parishes trying to establish youth ministry. Another person says, happily surprised at how much my children have absorbed from being in the services. They burst into hymns spontaneously at home. In reference to disunity, one person says, Orthodoxy in America is so fractured. Yep. Another person says, my bishop is 16 hours away, and the 2 other churches in my city are not under the same management. This causes a lot of problem for some people. A lot of chaos. Surprises and disappointments in reference to evangelism and mission lacking. One person says, need greater emphasis on bringing new people into the church. Good luck with that, with the toxic online Orthodox behavior and with ethnophilitism. Another person says, lack of wanting to evangelize and share the faith from people who have been Orthodox their entire lives. Another person says, why do some attack online Orthodox channels that open the door to the now secular Western world to the Orthodox faith? As far as women, quote, glad our parish includes girls in the service with holding candles. So, in other words, they have altar servers at their Orthodox parish. Another person says, lack of ministries and fellowship for women. Another one says, why we don't have female deacons as the church one did. Another person says, why women are not more persuaded to wear a veil. So earlier we saw one person said, oh, I love this, they wear a veil. And then I said, well, it's not always the case. Yeah. Depends on what parish you're going to. All right, more surprises and disappointments with music and singing. One person says, new priest said that we shouldn't sing along with the choir unless you are in the choir. Oh, no, no, stop. Get that priest some catechesis. Gosh, wow. Another person says, I miss people singing in worship. Protestants sing like their salvation depends on it. I've seen this before. I've seen it. A lack of participation in the chanting. I get it. Another person says, why doesn't Orthodox Church keep up with the times and be culturally relevant in their worship music? Well, this is the difficulty, Orthodoxy. I told you they're dealing with the same problems. You're going to have an influx of people in Orthodoxy who want to push for, let's keep up with the times, let's be more modern. Just like we struggle with that in Catholicism, people are wanting to push for those things. Orthodoxy is not free from that problem. They have the same issue. They're a little bit more insular because of the ethnic problem, but that's being eroded, as you see. And so the same problems that people are fleeing from to come to Orthodoxy, they're going to experience that in Orthodoxy. The grass isn't greener. Okay, so some more turnoffs. Liberal ideas in the church, creeping secular liberalism in Orthodoxy. This is a complaint that people have about Orthodoxy. It's becoming too liberal. Now, does that sound interesting? Yes, it should. Because again, a lot of people are fleeing Protestantism and Catholicism, and they feel, oh, it's just too liberal. You're going to have the same problem here. Too liberal, dislike. One person says, attempts at modernization and making relevant of the faith. That's what they've experienced. Another person experiences endorsement of the pan-heresy of ecumenism. Oh, that's more of a problem of catechesis on the part of this individual. They've been listening to too much Jade Iyer or Peter Ayers. Boy, I don't know how Orthodoxy will ever recover from this kind of mentality with people like this joining their ranks. People who want to drag it down the same paths that led to the destruction of the Western denominations. One of the things you'll discover in Orthodoxy is people are pushing for gay things, right? People are pushing for all sorts of liberalism. You will experience that in Orthodoxy. Tolerance of envelope pushers in academic theological circles. The episcopal failure to discipline and censor is a great disappointment. Sound familiar? A lot of Catholics say, oh, there's not enough discipline. You might be right about that. But they'll say, there's not enough discipline. I got to go to Orthodoxy where they take the faith seriously. And yet, from real people who are actually converting, they're saying, no, the episcopal leaders are not disciplining these people. On the other hand, one person says, I need to always set Orthodoxy as in opposition to the West, to the point that if a Western person says the sky is blue, we must say it's green so as not to be Western. Yep. Seen that before. I've mentioned that once or twice, haven't I? Orthodox, they form their theology in reaction and opposition to Catholicism. It's not an actual search for what is the traditional faith. That is not Orthodoxy. The Orthodox Church doesn't say, what is the traditional faith? No. What they often say is, well, what do the Catholics believe? Whatever they say, well, I'm going to say the opposite. That's not doing theology. That's not preserving the faith. Another person says simplistic fundamentalism, priests muddling about in minor matters, rather than present the rich treasures of the church, decrying anything they don't like as modern and Western. Again, it's this anti-Western, anti-modern approach. It's a fundamentalistic, I should say, or fundamentalist approach. Another person says, we're increasingly presented with two alternatives. Liberalization akin to what occurred in mainline Protestantism, or rigorism that robs its adherents of the easy yoke that comes with following Christ. Another person says, correlation between traditional liturgical worship and social and political conservatism. People of all political persuasions can and are strongly attracted to Orthodox worship. That's effectively the end of the survey. Convert profile page or slideshow or slide 51. Under the category serious about the faith, not Orthodoxy light or Orthodoxy in name only. They're looking for meaning. Not all are looking for a friend. They want akathis more than golf tourneys. Let's see. This can lead to ultra hyperdoxy, emphasis on exotic differentness, freezing everything. Demographics, male, young. Many socially, often politically conservative, most already Christian to some degree. I mean, again, a lot of their converts are already Christians. They're not really they're not really converting non-Christians. They're just effectively poaching or receiving others who are Christians because people are dissatisfied with their communion. And so they go to Orthodoxy. But then they come here and they find out in Orthodoxy, well, a lot of those same problems are there as well. Many arrival paths, invitation, reading, internet influencers. They're attracted to apostolic, authentic, historical, continuity, unchanged, stability, fullness, active, participative worship, English, beauty. They're fleeing shallow, doctrinal, social innovation, difficulties, or family and friends. Okay. Why the significant number? Why now? There's a general religious churn. The pandemic, people have time on their hands. They began to consider deeper life questions, became disconnected from current tradition and relationships. They're dissatisfied with current religious tradition, denominational issues, creeping secularism, theological shallowness, and the internet. Streaming, improved websites, podcasts, influencers, word of mouth accelerated, intensified via social media. But you'll notice these are all more side issues. They're not really converting for the right reasons in many of these cases. Okay. You kind of get the gist of it. That's effectively it. You're welcome to go and check out the rest of the survey. I'll put it in the show notes. Go and check it out. But But I find it fascinating because, again, it confirms a lot of what I've been saying. A lot of my own experience when I was Orthodox shows that, again, the grass isn't really greener. You're going to experience a lot of the same problems that you're either experiencing in Protestantism or Catholicism. You'll experience those in Orthodoxy. That's not a reason to become Orthodox. If you become Orthodox, it's because you really need to be theologically convinced that that is the church Christ established. And that doesn't need to be formed out of an environment of I'm trying to flee something. You need to come into Orthodoxy with eyes wide open, realizing you're going to have these same problems. So you need to go to Orthodoxy for a different reason if you're going to go to Orthodoxy. Rather, however, I would suggest come to Catholicism. And if you want the East, if you want that Eastern tradition, we have Eastern Catholic churches. We have the best of both worlds. Everything great that Orthodoxy offers in the Eastern tradition, we offer in Eastern Catholicism. But we had the added part where we preserve the Eastern tradition of communion with the Pope that Eastern Orthodox do not preserve. And it's fundamental and it's essential. So you have the best of both worlds in Eastern Catholicism, whereas you don't have that. You're lacking something fundamental in Eastern Orthodoxy. And because of that lack of union with the Pope, there are all kinds of problems in Orthodoxy that will not be resolved. You might experience some of those problems in Catholicism, but we are resolving and we're working through them, and we can resolve them with the magisterium, with the leadership of the church, because we have the fullness of what Christ established. The Orthodox lack that. And so ultimately the schism that Orthodox are currently experiencing, they have a massive division right now with Constantinople, Russia, and Alexandria, among others. That schism is just not going to be resolved. I don't think it's going to be resolved without some kind of union with the papacy. But anyways, I hope you all enjoy this. Hopefully it was helpful in kind of opening your eyes to the grass isn't greener. So please be aware. I do have also an Eastern Orthodox playlist answering Eastern Orthodoxy that you're welcome to check out, where I engage the theological questions, because that's really where the debate is at. The debate is not, am I going to experience woke and modernism and this and that? You're going to experience that anywhere. The thing is, you should make a decision based on what the truth is. And so I focus ultimately on what the doctrinal claims are, why Catholicism is right. And you can certainly check that again in the answering Eastern Orthodoxy playlist that I have, or engaging Eastern Orthodoxy playlist. Certainly check that out here on the channel. Also, if you want to support me, patreon.com/reason and theology. Don't forget to hit the like button and the subscribe button. Also hit the bell for notifications so you know when I go live. So if you enjoy this, especially if you're a Catholic, you watch this and you think I want more people to hear this, especially Orthodox, you need to do your part by hitting the like button, leave a comment, also hit the subscribe button, because the more you interact with this video, the more YouTube will share it. So if you're a Catholic, you want to spread this message to other Orthodox or people who are considering Orthodoxy, perhaps Protestants, get this to them by doing your part, by interacting with the video. And again, if you want to support me, this is the way I provide for my family. I would greatly appreciate some help. Not only subscribe, but also check me out, patreon.com/reason and theology. You get access to extra content and be able to enable me to continue to do this. All right. So that's going to do it. We'll see you later. God bless. Hey, everybody. Just wanted to tell you about my new free ebook, Church Chaos, Biblical Insights for Confused Catholics. If you are a confused Catholic and you're thinking about leaving the Catholic Church, or you're thinking about converting to the church, but you see that there's a crisis in the church and you're just unsure, this is the book for you. Again, it is free. Just simply go to reasonandtheology.com. You'll see a pop-up that comes up on your screen. Just simply click on it and you'll put in your email and it will provide you the free PDF ebook right then and there. Please check it out if you're confused about the situation in the Catholic Church today. reasonandtheology.com. Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button and the subscribe button. See you next time. God bless.